and Westward Wildlife. We're going to see.
You want me to leave it?
Yes, please.
Can I do the lights?
Yeah, it is actually quite a bit of a difference. You drop them.
Yeah.
Sally asked me if I'd come along. Some of you may have noticed that on the Shalfleet Council and the Isle of Council websites, there's a link to a blog that I do. I'm based in Freshwater. I've lived on the island 3.5 years. Before that, I lived in Bedfordshire. I was chairman of the Natural History Society in Bedfordshire, also chaplain in Bedford Blues, just started with my Bedford Blues top on, which is a real privilege. So it's great having the wildlife on the island, but I'm missing the rugby, because no one on the that's why I go to the rugby class one. I did a walk the other week, and I've been doing off-trapping at All Saints. I've done stuff in the past at Catholic school. St Saviour's, I've seen St Gerard's. Gerard's far there, isn't it? St Gerard's, well, perhaps it is. But anyway, some of you would have seen this. This went viral on the internet a few weeks ago. This amazing photo. This person went for a walk and he heard a bit of a kerfuffle, and suddenly this green woodpecker goes flying past. With a weasel sort of hanging on the back, and I understand eventually the green woodpecker came to the ground and managed to escape the weasel. But it went all round, and people thought, wow, isn't that absolutely fantastic? And one of the things I'm trying to do with contact I've had with various people, to say, actually, especially here in the West White, our wildlife is absolutely amazing, and it's out there. Some people say to me, so I'm out all the time, I've got a very long-suffering wife, and I'm out there all the time doing stuff. Sometimes people say to me, you know, you're a bit mad with their Facebook friends say, I've got all these photos of moths and insects and mammals and all the rest. And I said, well, do you like spring watch? And they said, yeah, I love it. I said, well, I'm out there doing it. And it is fantastic. We've got so much around. And just very briefly, just go through a couple of slides. You see the weasel there. It's actually my favourite family, what they call the muscelids, the weasel family. And this is, you see these quite regularly, just down by off the rails, actually on the bit by the lakes there, running to and fro if you wait and across the park if you're there at the right time. Because it's a stoat, and different from the weasel, it's got black tip to the tail, and so there's sort of subtle differences. But I love this family. The reason I put this on is for years I've been. By the way, this isn't my photo. Most of the photos aren't mine. But for years I've been looking for a stoat or a weasel den to put at the trail cam outside and all that, and haven't found one yet. If any of you have got one in your garden or your land or whatever, please get in touch with me. So the most amazing animals. They're quite vicious, of course. And there's a stoat that's got a rabbit, and I've had a few occasions where I've had stoats catch rabbits right at my feet, really, which is quite amazing. And if that ever happens, what you can do, a little trick you can do is, if you ever come across a stoat that's caught a rabbit, weasels tend to go for rats and small mice and things. But if you ever come across a stoat with a rabbit, if you walk towards it, it will go away, but it won't disappear. It'll look at you, and then you go backwards again, it will come back to the kill, and you walk towards it again, do it a few times, it's not fair on the stoat otherwise, and then walk towards it again, it will sort of back off, and it will sort of be looking at you, and then it will come in again. And there are often sea stoats around, but they're quite common, and weasels here on the West White. Some of you, a lot of people love badgers, a lot of people I find out aren't so keen on badgers. I'm one of the former. I absolutely love them, and I just can't wait at the moment. Sorry?
I'm sorry, there's a candle behind you, I think it should be blown out.
Yeah, right, actually, yeah. That's not my time, I've got to finish by the time it goes. That's must be all day. Well spotted. Well spotted. I used to take my children, I've got 3 boys, they're all in their sort of mid-20s and above now. We used to take them badger watching in Bedfordshire, and you can't do anything better with children than taking them watching badgers and also being there, being quiet and watching the badgers come out and the cubs. And we're just at that time of year now when the cubs should start appearing, and I can't wait for that. And I've got a video. This is a set down there by Freshwater, not far from the co-op. This is one of my favourite places for leaving the trail come out. If you go to the blog, you'll see various bits of video from where I left the trail cam. Again, not so much recently, I'm afraid, but if you go back, you can see quite a bit. And I'm hoping, if I do that, yeah. The great thing about leaving the trail cam out is you can just pick up these wonderful bits of badger footage, and this is one of my favourite bits. In fact, I've got a bit like this, I couldn't find another bit where there's a badger on his back just like this, who's actually obviously in bliss. Badgers obviously spend a lot of their time underground. When they come out at night, they want to scratch, and they love to have a good scratch. And I caught this one just beautifully outside the set. There he's on his back there, looks scratching his arms, and get his face now. And this is why I found this absolutely wonderful. I've had when you get two together, so grooming one another, it's quite fun as well. But I'm going to go behind his neck look, and I'm look down there as well, and then a bit on the haunches as well. Let's have a quick sort of bit there. Badgers, they're clean animals. They spend quite a bit of time sort of, you know, doing this and getting themselves clean. There you go, look. And you don't often see badgers with this kind of behaviour. Well, it happens, but it's not often caught. Yeah, just hand a bit there. And again, we're going back again in a minute. There we go. So scratch there first of all, and absolutely wonderful. I've got footage of sort of sometimes 8 to 9 badgers all together and doing something. It's quite amazing, really. So there it is. Anyway, so leaving the trail camp, you just never know what kind of footage you're going to find. This is what I call set C's. It's not far from the co-op. I've also got set B, set A, which are along the allotments of freshwater. I haven't got any sets up here that I follow, but you never know what you're going to see. And there's another mammal that's around in this area that now has been declining quite a lot over the UK, starting to come back in some places, and that's the water vole here. I've got a bit of video here, the water vole by Freshwater Causeway from a couple of years ago. I've found two main sort of concentrations of water voles between the Freshwater Causeway and between Freshwater Bay. This one, if you're walking from, not off the rails, from the end of the line, so if you're walking the freshwater end towards Freshwater Causeway, and there's a little, you go over a little bridge just before you get to the causeway, yeah? And there's a little sort of metal post on the left. This is that bridge. And so you never know, there's people sort of passing you, you never know what's going on right at your feet. And there he is, I was just there with the video camera, sort of middle of the day. I've heard a plot there and I've walked past a few times, so I did suspect there was one there. And he thinks, well, I'll have something to eat as well. And this is great, really, because as many of you know, because of the American mink that's been, you know, the well-meaning animal campaigners sort of let go, because of the way, what we've done with our waterways and our countryside, these have really declined quite dramatically. So to have a couple of, well, a good population, and so what we call a meta-population, a good population, feeding smaller populations on that little bit of western yard is quite significant, really. So I was really pleased to get this footage, and sometimes it's really look. You can probably smell me. And again, keep your eyes peeled. Even during the middle of the day, you never know. That's right, like I said, right next to the footpath there, by Freshwater Causeway, and you never know what you're going to see. Let's move on for the time. Anyone know what that belongs to?
Dormouse?
Yeah, it's the dormouse. Isle of Wight dormouse are really common here on the Isle of Wight, but it's actually one of these. It's a bit of harvest mouse, and the reason I put this on is that harvest mice, just people thought there was no harvest mice on the Isle of Wight until recently. In fact, the zoo have been breeding them with a view to actually releasing them sort of all over the west, all over the Isle of Wight. I came here, I found Bedford's first harvest mouse for 5 years. Often they're there, but you just don't see them unless you're actually looking for them. And there's a couple of people, experts, who came to survey on the island a few sites a couple of years ago now, and they found down on the road by Compton Bay in the brambles there, again, this is my photo, but they found a number of harvest mice nests, and also Newtown, just up the road from here. So they found harvest mice around. I put the trail cam out, and actually I'm convinced I got the first bit of footage ever, or certainly, you know, of an Isle of Wight harvest mouse, but some people have been doing it, but I asked an expert, how much is it going to get harvest mouse? I'm with you, but they're fascinating. This is the one that I caught in Bedfordshire. I kept it in an aquarium for a few days, and just while that's a wonderful thing to watch. And my poor wife, I didn't tell her to escape one night. And so I put lots of live traps out around our living room and all downstairs. And I went down at 4 o'clock in the morning, and thankfully, one of the traps had it in, so I was able to return it and took it back to where I found it. They're wonderful little creatures, but they're around. And again, if any of you see harvest mice or whatever, be interested to know, because it's only been the last couple of years that people start saying, oh, they're here on the island. They've been here all the time. Yeah. But if you're not looking for them, you just don't know they're there. So a few birds around as well. This photo from a nationwide competition a few years ago. The person took down a sparrowhawk, taking a woodcock, lots of sparrowhawks, birds of prey around. And especially this one. When I was young, I've always been mad about wildlife, and I was fascinated by peregrines. But I thought, you know, I'm never going to see them. So when I was young, in these sort of, I was born in 1960, so in the sort of mid-60s onwards, of course with DDT and all the rest, they're just being basically blasted off out the countryside. But now, you can go down to the Needles, you can go on the Western Yard, up by Yarmouth, and there's a good chance you'll see these. In fact, recently, I was watching two people in a yacht that was moored in the opposite what we call the Strait, Bill Cox in Yarmouth, that bit of thing there, it's a yacht moored, and two people working on the boat. Unknowingly, there was a peregrine sitting on mast about 20 feet above their head, and they didn't realise, and the peregrines often sit on the yard arms, or a peregrine often sits on the yard arms of those yachts there at the top of the Western Yard. Absolutely fantastic to see this bird, and other birds making a comeback. Buzzards now, I notice people start to say, oh, buzzards, they're doing this, they're doing that. But I think it's fantastic that these birds are coming back. When I'm talking to the children, I'm trying to educate as well, and things like the green woodpecker, they're often found like lawns because they feed entirely on ants. And I do this just to show the tongue up. You know, you can see what it's doing now, it's putting its tongue down holes and that. The tongue goes right back and around the head. And even our common birds, they're absolutely fascinating. There's so much you can learn about them, and it's exciting and all the rest. The blackcap, how many of you get blackcaps in your garden? Anyone had them over the winter? We never used to see them. Yeah? We never used to see them in the winter. This is a male with a black cap, the female's got a brown cap. There's a lot of blackcaps around now in the winter, but they're not our blackcaps. The blackcaps that have started to sing now, if you know the song, you go down the yard, and there's a beautiful sort of melodious song all down the yard. And our blackcaps spend the winter in North Africa and Southern Europe and all the rest. But the ones we get in the winter are ones that made a mistake. They're from the continent, from Germany and places like that. And some years ago they made a mistake, some of the other ones, and ended up here. They came sort of west instead of sort of southwest. Some ended up here because we feed the birds in the winter, and there's milder winters. They survived, and then their progeny came here. And now, actually, all the blackcaps, and there's an increasing number of blackcaps we get in the winter, actually come from Europe. And the thing is, it's an advantage. It's quick for them to get back, to get the best nesting places first, before the normal ones that are nesting again in sort of Southern Europe and all the rest. So it's quite fascinating, and through reading and other things, we've been discovering sort of, say we, experts more better than me, have been discovering that these sorts of things happen. I find that fascinating. That's why I get excited. Even the sort of things you see having, wow, this is going on. And the wings of these actually, I think this one, are shorter. And, you know, there's actually sort of an evolution that's going on between these two races of blackcaps. And it's because you feed them in the winter. That's the reason why this is happening. And then the swift, just carrying just a couple of minutes. One of my favourite birds, I love the swift, and I love to say to the children, you know, the swift, the young swift leaves the nest. But if you ever picked a swift up, they've got tiny little feet that you can hardly see, and they put them on the floor and they'll just sort of go like this, and they can't do a lot. Swifts are made for the air. They sleep in the air, they mate in the air, obviously they catch all their food in the air, all those insects. And a young swift, when it leaves the nest, will fly then down to South Africa and spend the winter, our winter, flying around South Africa. Then it will fly back to the UK and spend the next year flying around. It's not touched the ground yet. Okay, then it will spend the next summer flying around. At the end of the summer, that swift that you'll see, sometimes you see the young ones all coming together and screaming together, and bunches of young ones. At the end of the summer, it will then go back to South Africa. It's not touched the ground yet. It will fly around Southern Africa, around South Africa, and then the next year it will come back, and it might nest. That's 2 years that it's been in the air non-stop. Some don't nest that year, and again they'll spend their time going around, and then they'll go back down to Southern Africa and back again. Sometimes they'll spend 3 years before actually touching the ground. Amazing, or this is why our wildlife is so fascinating. It's so much more about the swift, I think, but absolutely amazing. Sometimes the special things turn up. Some of you might recognise this. This is what turned up on Yarmouth Ponds a few years ago. Wilson's phalarope, all the way. Sometimes you get a hurricane or strong winds in America, birds take off into head south, and they end up heading east and end up in Yarmouth, places like that. And this beautiful rare bird, of course, quite a twitch, as they call it, Yarmouth a few years ago. I was in the Pyrenees on holiday at the time. I got back just in time. I was the last person to see it on Sunday night before it disappeared the next day. And a beautiful bird. And Will, who found this, you know, this is the actual bird. Will, who found it, was so over the moon when he saw this at the lakes. He came to Scotland to see this bird.
What's it called?
It's called Wilson's phalarope.
Wilson's phalarope.
Yeah, it's one of these, you know, twitches. I'm not a twitcher. I wouldn't travel. Well, we've had a minute. Yeah, at the time. But I suppose, you know, it's a really special bird. Very quickly to finish with some insects. Some of you know this is the glandular fritillary, very bright, sort of orange butterfly that we get on the sort of south side of the island. It'll be, well, a few weeks' time they'll start appearing. The larvae feed on ripworm plantain. This next one, I don't even recognise. Anyone know what that is? It's a moth, that's right. So It's a reddish buff moth. That ring any bells? It ought to. The council is here.
Isn't it up the road here?
That's right. The only known tiny population of reddish buff moth is in Ingwood Common in the UK. This is. So we've got, and that's the only population we know about in the UK. I was at a meeting just a few weeks ago at Boulder, where the multi-agency meeting in Natural England and the moth traps of the Irish while I was there, and Wildlife Trust, and saying, what can we do to try and protect it and hopefully maybe even increase it? Feeds on a plant called sawwort, but this is the only place in the UK to be proud. I know it's a Buckminch. Caterpillar's nice, but it isn't a Buckminch. But that's a special one. It's good to know about if you live in Shalfleet, because you're the closest really to this special special one.
There's some vegetation there,
That's right. Sawwort. The thing is that they're trying to introduce it to Newtown and other places, and it doesn't seem to have gone across. But the conditions are just ideal there if they're kept up with the heat, because the microclimate you get down the soil around and all the rest just seems to be ideal for the caterpillars. As with a lot of things, it's not one thing. It's a number of factors that sort of interact. These are bog standard common around here. Elephant hawk moths, wonderful hawk moths, and this is the next one is a live hawk moth. If you do moth trapping, I do moth trapping, and it's absolutely fascinating. Now, what I do, just to bring back to what I'm doing in the area, I've been in with the local schools taking moths in. You know, the kids think it's wonderful. I took a load of moths in, including big hawk moths, to All Saints. It's last year, the year before this one, I can't remember. But I remember cycling down Long Halves a month or so later, and some kids came over to me and said, Stephen, and I sort of sprinted a hole to the right. They said, Stephen, we still remember you doing the moths, and it was wonderful, and we loved it. They said, what we're doing at night now is we're opening our bedroom windows, opening the curtains, and putting the light on. And I'm thinking, do you know, their parents probably hate me, but I was excited. It's getting kids interested. You know, in the day when everyone's on the computer on the West White, there's so much out there, and kids are spending all the time on computers and all the rest of it. It's just tragic because we're in a beautiful area. And then finally, just three photos of my favourite. Well, mammals is my main interest, but last year, hoverflies is what I do surveys for mainly. And people, hoverflies, there's nearly 300 species in the UK. And last year, the National Trust asked if I'd do a survey of the Newtown site. And over the year, when I popped there and back when I could, and I had over 91 species, I had 91 species of hoverflies. So this one you'll probably see in gardens and other places in the woods. Some people call it the football, and it's that lovely sort of Watford is it type sort of football jersey on the back. There aren't any English names really, a lot of them are pendulous, but beautiful things. And they get hoverflies like that. They can't hurt, they can't sting, although obviously they watch swimming, so they hope that other things think they will sting, so they leave them alone. And then a final one, which is bumblebee mimic. That's very common, this you'll see this around Volucella bomulans. And this is just at the fly level. And I think what I want to say for the all really is just, you know, we live in the most amazing area, and I know nothing, I know squat, I'm learning and interested in trying.
Okay, thank you. Next item is I will give my report. Don't worry, it's not very long. Well, it's been a year of changes for the council since the last annual meeting, as I'm sure you will notice by the difference in personnel. John Whitney, Bill Burton, Jane Jacobs resigned, and Susanna Jennings, our clerk, left to take a position as Bryston clerk. I would like to take this opportunity to thank those councillors and the clerk that have gone through their hard work over the years. We welcome 3 new councillors, John McGurk, Pam Miles and Steve French, after a very successful election. Our new clerk, Sandy Wells, took over to keep us all in order. Lost my place. Took over to keep us all in order, with a vast experience has kept us on track. And as with all the changes, there has been a while when the functioning of the council has not been as smooth as it should. And I would like, but now I think we're back on an even keel, as we've now got a full council. We were actually at one point down to In July, with only 2 councillors standing, Councillor Houston and I attended the annual end of season assembly at the school where we gave out the leaving presents to the children. This was a happy occasion and underlines the support for this wonderful school. Keeping with the school theme, generally the children attended the question and answer session of our meeting, and very interesting it turned out to be. We soon found out from their comments the type of playing equipment they would now prefer and hope that in the future perhaps if we can get another playground in the Shalfleet area, we will be able to consult with them again and put up something that they need and not what we think they need. Also, the same problem with the dangerous conditions that the pupils and parents have when they're crossing the road. And it's still an ongoing problem. It's been going on for years, but councillors McGurk and French have very kindly decided to take this up. And I think a new approach is very welcome, and perhaps they'll be able to succeed where we haven't been able to. I'll just spend a small time covering a few of the issues that have arisen over the year. As you might have seen in the county press, we have asked for a delayed gate at Golden Field so that people do not have to lift up the heavy gate at one end. There is a small gate at one end and not at the other. We've also had to take on some extra grass cutting this year from the council, particularly in Newbridge. Where else was it? It's somewhere on Winnifields. We have a new website which is now more up to date, and we hope to have a youth section, but as yet this has not been done. The West White Council of Shalfleet, Yarmouth, Freshwater Top and Calvin and Bryson meet 3 or 4 times a year and try to have a united voice on issues that affect us here in the area. There is to be a seminar on how to apply for grants, and I hope to encourage as many councillors as possible to attend, as I feel this will be very useful in the future as money gets more tight. I must congratulate at this point Jill Cowley and the committee for their sterling work at Millennium Green. It now looks like green and is getting noticed. Their event last summer proved that what can be done if we put your mind to something. Challenges ahead. Well, we don't really know, quite honestly, what the Isle of Wight Council will try to put more pressure on us, and we do not know what they are as yet, but we shall obviously, I think, be getting more things that we have to do. And I think we should bear it in mind that although we may not be directly affected by the cuts in services, other West White councils will be. And places like the swimming pool and the library, etc., which are outside our boundaries, we might need to look at this as far as a bit of funding is concerned, because although it's not directly within our parish, it does affect the people of our parish. I would like to thank Val Quinn. She's represented us on the Yarmouth Harbour and Flood Defence Scheme. Hilary Higgins as the tree warden, who continues to support us, and Stuart of Isle of Wight Council, who turns up to our meetings after a long day and keeps us informed of what's going on. I'd like to also thank all the councillors for their work over the past year, Sally for taking over at such a difficult time, and to you, the public, who have attended our meetings over the last year. At this point, I would just like to remind everybody, if I may, that all of us are volunteers. We seek no reward for working for the community, only the satisfaction knowing that we're doing our bit for you. Thank you, that's all I have to say. Now I'd like to ask the Isle of Wight Councillor, Stuart Hutchinson, for his report, please. Come up here, Stuart. Excuse me for not standing up. You're going to need me.
Very short, about 3 minutes, I think. It won't be anywhere near as entertaining as the talk that Stephen gave to us, but I will allude to that talk with a comment that my small nephew said to me many years ago. He said, Uncle, do you know the difference between a weasel and a stoat? I said, no, I don't. It's very simple. A weasel is weaselly recognised, but a stoat is totally different.
And I still can't tell them apart. But anyway.
Shalfleet parish, because the area covers 3 parishes. The ward's the largest on the island. It covers 14 separate communities, from Yarmouth in the west to Marks Corner and Thorness Bay in the east, within the 3 parishes of Calball, Shalfleet and Yarmouth. This report covers the work that I do for the Island Council and within the ward. As Pam has mentioned, this last year has been extremely difficult financially for the Island Council because on top of the 36 millions that we had previously saved, there's a requirement to save another 28 over 3 years, including 14 millions in the current year. And as I guess most of you will know, that unless there is an island referendum, the rates are capped at 1.99% increase. But against that, we have a very substantial loss of government grant and an increasing demand for services, especially the rapidly expanding cost of adult social care. And despite the fact that we put more money into adult social care last year, we found that on top of that we had almost a £4 million overspend that we had to cope with. Because of those increasing costs and the capping of our income, we have had to ask town and parish councils if they'll take on some services, especially things that are more local, like toilets and grounds maintenance, and for the bigger towns and parishes, beach cleaning and some environmental management. And often those services are quite local to a particular area. And we've been forced to curtail some services and increase charges for others. I personally oppose the increased parking charges, which I think will damage our tourist economy, and I think it will damage the businesses in our high streets. However, during the year we have successfully partnered with voluntary organisations such as HUK, which enable services to be supported by the use of local volunteers. Many services such as the Good Neighbour Scheme and the library support couldn't be managed now without them. In addition, the 3 healthcare providers on the island, the Isle of Wight Council dealing with public health, the Clinical Commissioning Group, which is all of the island's GPs handling primary care, and the NHS, and are now working much more closely together under what's called the My Life programme, which actually I was pleased to inaugurate as its first chairman. Because they're working more closely together, we get a better joined-up service, and it keeps the administrative costs down, so we can actually deliver more service for the same amount of money. As well as the Isle of Wight full council meetings, I continue to serve on the council's appeals committee, the audit committee, the employment committee, the scrutiny committee, and the pensions committee. And I act as the shadow cabinet member for resources. I'm currently leading a specialist task group looking at how the council procures and manages its contracts. Doing this more effectively than we have in the past will become particularly important as the council seeks external public sector, voluntary and commercial providers to help deliver its services. Locally, I serve on the Yarmouth Harbour Advisory Committee and the Yarmouth Flood Defence Working Group. And to keep in touch with issues in the ward, I attend and report to meetings of the Town Council and the to parish councils, and I attend as many local social events as I can from time to time, such as the Porchfield Tea and Chat and the Coffee Mornings of the Government Society. I write a regular monthly column for the Yarmouth and Freshwater magazine, which always carries my contact details and an invitation to contact me if there are any issues I can help with. And those details are printed each month in the local parish magazines as well. I'm pleased during the year I've been able to help many individual residents and businesses with a range of issues from planning to housing to highways, social care and education. I've attended and spoken at meetings of local residents concerned with the proposal to site two giant wind turbines at Parkhurst, which would have had a major impact upon residents in Mark's Corner. I opposed those at planning committee and I'm pleased they were rejected. And I know the developer has now decided he doesn't have a sufficiently good enough case to appeal. I also spoke at planning committee to oppose the recent proposal for 24 poorly designed and sited dwellings on the edge of Shalfleet village. Development with almost no connection to the village and no indication as to how those homes would be managed for the benefit of local people. I have quarterly meetings with the chief executive and senior staff of Whitelink, and am supporting the initiatives to create regular dialogue through an island-wide fair users consultative group, as well as the local groups giving feedback on the individual fair links. I have regular meetings with Sergeant Mark Blythe about policing issues in the ward, and I speak regularly to the chairman of the police and crime panel about them. But I'm delighted to say that within the ward we are fortunate to have very little crime, and we have one of the most attractive areas to live in, and I'll do my very best to keep it that way.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much. Now then, it's open question time, question and answer time. Who'd like to start? Arthur.
Sorry, Stuart. About a fortnight ago, I noticed a very cheap notice in the paper that repairs on Newwood Hill through to Hillcrest Lane will be redone. Could you make a representation to London Road as we look at the signage on the road, because it doesn't comply with the Road Traffic Act, and we need road signage dealt with in that respect. This is through Cranwell. Secondly, we'll go from Cranwell to Hillcrest Lane. It's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. Corresponding from the police and the council indicated that they didn't know of any fatal accidents. But this is incorrect. There have been fatal accidents on that stretch, 2009, I believe. And previously, coming from Yarmouth to Cranwell, just on the junction, a car was racing, the gear snapped, and the car hit the tree and 2 were killed. But there's this indication that the speed needs to be reduced in that area down to 40. Now on that area, about a fifth of that road has white lines. There are 8 slow signs and 8. Coming to Hillcrest Lane, because of the number of serious and fatal accidents that have occurred there, it's primarily the fault of the motorists, but there is an indication that the signage or lack of signage, etc., is insufficient. There's nothing there to indicate that there's part of an S-bend. And when it's resurfaced, can be looked at seriously to incorporate any signage, etc.
Taking all of those issues. Things that are the responsibility of Island Road, picking up and Tracy Ringer, who is his performance manager. And things which are to do with maintenance, whatever that maintenance is, white lines, potholes or whatever, I will take up with them. On the other issues about changing signage to improve safety, I have to say that over the last couple of years, the Island Council has performed abysmally on those things. It is partly to do with the change from having an organisation which did things itself, perhaps not all that well, but it had all the expertise necessary, and changing it to a commissioning arrangement, which more and more councils are going to, which means that most highway engineers want to be out there designing things and doing things and not sitting behind desks managing things. So our small client side, which was headed up originally by a very experienced chap called Mark Griffin, pretty well collapsed when he left. And we then appointed another very experienced contract manager, very high level guy. Funnily enough, he had in a previous existence been an assistant chief constable, so we were well aware of safety issues on roads and so on. A chap called Tony Toynton. He actually was quite a blunt, straight-speaking guy, and I thought it was a breath of fresh air. But unfortunately, the folks who were managing him didn't really like the blunt, straight-speaking, and they fell out and left. We have now had to, as an interim measure, appoint W.S. Atkins, and they have put 3 senior engineers on trying to get grips with something around 1,000 now outstanding issues. We have several of those in this ward. One we've been waiting for 2 years is improving the waiting times at the Volga viewpoint, because people are using it as a commute path. And you know where the Shalfleet church wall has been dropped down, and try to get it set up. And I can't remember how many discussions and emails I've had now, but that's been going on for 14 months. So I have to say the Island Council has not been performing well on that. I did speak to Phil Jordan, who is now the executive member responsible for highways, and he's doing his best to try and get some more resources into it. And I've got a meeting with him tomorrow. I think he begins to hate seeing not just me but other councillors coming up saying, what are you going to do about all that?
But as they're going to relay the road, take up the old, they have to relay the white lines as they are. Now this is the opportunity.
They won't check. You have to get all sorts of paperwork in place to change the speed limit, and the painting of the lines and changing the signs is the easy bit afterwards.
May I just add that not everybody wants speed limit changed.
I mean, they will always assess the limit before there's any changes made.
I mean, the accidents have been with people exceeding that speed limit.
Yeah, but most accidents are people going way too fast.
So,
And
I
often
would exceed
too
it
much
if it was a
drink.
40-hour limit.
Yeah, I mean, there are issues about the important thing is to try and get the limit right, and then to have enough management and monitoring so that people know that there is consequence if they do go significantly over the limit. And that is one of the issues.
There's something there that checks what's being paid for.
There were people who come up the other day.
Sorry?
There were people who come up the other day.
Really?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Stuart, with your meetings, would you ask them what's happening to the community highway fund? We have put in this as requested, and we haven't even had that acknowledgement.
No.
So could you remind me that?
I think you were alluding to probably the same problem. your emails and stuff disappearing into a black hole. There is a chap called Anthony Cook, who's actually a contracts officer, who's been trying to hold the fort for the whole island. And it's just, everybody admits it's snowed. And I mean, you don't get responses. I don't get responses. In fact, I sent an email to Phil Jordan only yesterday saying, this was about Shalfleet Church Hall. He said, well, after it had been going on for a year, you've promised personally you'd take it up and do something. I know that you set that on the 20th of January, and it's now April, and I still haven't had a reply. One feels as if one's beginning to bang one's head. And I understand the issues because we have cut down the number of staff.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've cut it down by over 30. Well, if you haven't got money, you can't pay them, can you? That's the tragedy. And it's not just us, it's the same with every council in the land.
Well, it strikes me that the county council needs a department that deals with how to get money out of anything.
We have, and we do get specific funding for all sorts of odd things. We've just been given £100,000 to sponsor some hire cars for people that are spoken. I think they really don't want this kind of frivolousness.
Is this car scheme that they've got in Cornwall? We people go along with the joint
It's 100,000. We could all use that much more effectively. We're also going to see, and I know on the island there's a great feeling that we ought to manage our own affairs, but across the country as a whole, the local authorities are changing and merging. In Wales they've got 13 counties. I mention Wales because the counties are often similar sizes in population to ours, but much bigger areas. And they're being recommended to cut down to 6. Several local authorities have combined to provide joint services. We ourselves have asked Hampshire to manage our fire service, although of course we should still have operational staff here, and that you probably won't notice any difference. And we have asked Hampshire to manage our education service. And I have to say, because Hampshire is a big county that has a lot of in-depth resources, the quality of officers that we see coming from Hampshire to do the work is chalk and cheese compared to what we have on the island. So we're very happy that things are improving. The only way we can do it is to actually combine with others. As a county, we are really much too small for our county services.
This is one of the reasons, if I can just carry on from that a little bit, Stuart, why the West White councils are getting together and meeting, because we feel that individually our voice isn't so well heard as if we have one voice. And the subject has been touched on, what happens if services go to Hampshire. West White gets left out in our opinion, as it is anyway on the island, whether that's right or wrong. If it goes to Hampshire, will the West White get left out even more? Because the Isle of Wight, there will be Hampshire, Isle of Wight, and then the West White. So that's one of the things we're discussing amongst ourselves, is how we can have a united front if something happens, and try and be proactive instead of reactive, and try and get our minds round it. I mean, like planning. If that goes over to Southampton or wherever it is, Winchester or wherever, will they look at the Isle of Wight as one and not appreciate the difference between the West White and certain other areas? Will they just look at it as the Isle of Wight as being like it is in planning policy the same at the moment? We don't know, but it's something we're very conscious of. We must, as a West White area, hold our ground. So that's what we're trying to do. It's in its infancy, but we can only go forward.
Yes, can I add something else into the
Yes, of course.
equation? I live in Wellow, the Thorny end of Wellow,
Right.
and traffic, which when it leaves Thorley, it goes up to 40.
Yeah.
And they don't, when it gets to the 30 for Wellows, at the first house road bank, they don't slow down.
Yeah. I have raised that one where I said, why do we have that short stretch of 40? And it can't be more than a couple of 100 yards long. It's quite silly. And we've actually got one sign, I'm sure you've seen it many, many times, that says 40, and about 20 feet away there's another one that says 30. I mean, it's just silly. And this is why we've got, and this sort of thing, perhaps 5 or 6 years ago, would have been dealt with reasonably expeditiously. And this is the kind of thing that lots and lots of councils are saying, can we get rid of these silly anomalies, can we sort it? But unless there are actually officers at the other end to get on with it and deal with it, it sits in an in tray.
Well, what I was wondering was, I know from what you've already said, it's probably out of the question, but would it not be possible just to even have slow on the road? Just because they don't slow down at 30, and they're coming whizzing past our drives, it makes it more difficult for us to come out.
The only thing I can say on the slow bit, I have talked to highways engineers about that. In fact, I've talked to, I think it's Kevin Burton, who's been there for a long time, and he said we've had lots and lots of people. Nobody takes any notice of slow on the road. They don't take much notice about the actual things in front of them. Because the problem is that slow means that you might be going a bit slower than you already are. You're already going much faster than you should. It's all relative, isn't it? What one person thinks is slow, another one doesn't. So there are real issues.
I spoke to the island steward, Mr. Bean,
Yeah.
and he raised the idea of having one of those light-up signs.
Yeah.
They're saying slow down.
Yeah.
But he said that the only way that we would make it happen was to go through the parish council and for them to recommend it back to Island Roads.
Well, Island Roads were very happy to do it. And when we talked to the Island Roads personnel, they say, oh, we can put this in, we can do that for you. We're very happy. Every time we do it, though, because they're a contractor, we have to pay them for it. And we have to pay them for those not only do we put them in, but to maintain them forever. And that money, firstly, it has to be agreed by the Island Council Highways client side, and then it has to be paid for. And individually, something like that might cost, I don't know, £500 to put in and £25 a year but multiply that by hundreds, which is the sort of thing we've got across the island as a whole. The other thing is that what they do is, even when they're saying yes, we consider it, they consider it and they prioritise it. And they prioritise. The awful thing about highways, it's not just here on the schedule, they prioritise things by the frequency and the intensity of accidents. Now that's a horrible thing to say, but it is the truth.
Well, we've had several near misses. It's all like, unless there is an accident, nothing will get done.
But the problem is they won't take their misses. They don't register.
No.
One thing that's quite salutary to look at, if you look on the internet, at a free resource called crashmap.uk, and bring up the Isle of Wight and look at and it goes back for about 8 or 9 years. It brings up all of the accidents, where they've occurred. It tells you how many people were involved, and it tells you the severity of the accident. I brought it up and looked at the reward and thought, ooh, that's really not looking good at all. And then I expanded it and looked at the island, and suddenly you see the difference.
Breaking down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it usually an island because you've got slow on the road, and then you go a bit further on it's slower.
Yes,
Basically, it's just Sally. I've been speaking to an environmental officer. Now that we don't fund any of the environmental services, my concern now is that the equipment in the playgrounds, etc., need to be inspected.
I do it weekly.
Correct.
Yeah.
But are you certified to inspect it?
So
Because are you certified to inspect that equipment? Because I understand that the person who's inspecting has to have a certificate.
right.
This is done, the certificate lasts for 3 years at a cost of £1,000 for these 3 years.
Right. I wasn't aware that I had to be certified.
And
I haven't thought that I needed that in other things. The only thing I will say, we have a water inspection due in May, and I've actually been in touch with them recently because if you remember, Jill Cowley wanted the trim traffic green added, so I've been liaising on that. I will certainly ask Roxburgh and see what's needed.
my concern is that if an accident with equipment occurs, the parish council will be liable because the insurance would not cover it.
Well, so how did you find out about the certified bit?
I've been talking to Leslie.
Right, okay. Can I just say that I will look into that and find out?
Yeah,
And
we'll look
I
into
wasn't
it.
aware. I mean, I have a rigid checklist which I go through, and I'm often to be seen sort of fiddling with bits of equipment. So yes, I will find out about that because obviously we don't want it to affect the parish council's insurance
No.
if something did happen. So thank you for raising that.
If I could go back to Island Roads, Councillor Hutchinson, they've recently remarked the road in Station Road. It's unfortunate some of the white markings, which are very nice, have gone over potholes. And also, I think the guy that done it might have had a bottle of two because some of the lights are like this.
Yeah.
And I think, well, hey-oh. It's very poor workmanship.
It is.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah. And I've said, I asked them, why are you suddenly painting white lines everywhere? And that's it, this blitz of painting white lines. And sometimes they've done it without keeping the necessary traffic calming in place. So when people have gone over it, they've carried the white paint with them. And it's a mess. And they say, well, because we have these things called milestones in the contract, unless they actually reach those milestones by certain dates, they get a huge financial penalty. And they don't want to have a huge financial penalty, so they're slapping paint down to get the milestone. Now, ordinarily, you look at the client side of your organisation and you would give them the authority to say, on this particular road, you're exempt from doing that because there's too many potholes and you're going to resurface it in 12 months and we'll live with poor white lines for another year. But when you've got nobody at the end who does that, they just carry on and do what the contract tells them to. It's a waste of, the only thing I can say at the moment is it's not a waste of island ratepayers' money because that money is coming from this huge PFI grant that we were given by the government. But that's still, we still shouldn't waste.
It's just unfortunate, like Island Roads do good work. I'm not going to run them down. They are doing some very good work. Boulder is a good example. It's just a shame that they get slapdashed like that. And I think that is exactly what winds people up. Sorry, but to go over
You
a
notice
pothole.
something that's done wrong and you don't.
Well, you do, that's right. But equally, I want to congratulate them on some of the work they have done. But equally, they shouldn't be wasting, to me, go do somewhere where the road's okay. Don't fill up potholes with it.
If you're a contractor,
You're going to go, well,
there's a lot here to do it.
yeah, well, they've even redone a school sign in Newport. The school shut down 2 years ago, but they just renewed it. Wonderful.
And that's why, whenever you give stuff to somebody, it doesn't matter who you give it to, whether it's another council, whether it's a contractor, whether it's an association with a charity,
Yeah,
you have to have strong management.
you do.
You can't just hand the contract out and think that's fine.
No, you're right, I know.
What the cost is going to be, because it will get stupidity.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have said is that we really need, we're not bad at procuring contracts. There's all kinds of rules and regulations. And we unfortunately, once the contract's let, it tends to be that that's it. So we're actually not very good at contract management. The problem was that having said that in council, they then say, well, it's jolly good, you can lead a team that will sort that out. And I can't, but I can at least look at what the problems are and bring them to the attention of the executive and say, we should be looking at that. I also believe that we ought to spend more resource on our independent auditors who can look at not just whether the money is being spent properly, but whether we're getting value for it. And they can go axe to grind. You know, they're not political, they just look at it and say, you're not getting good value for that, you need to change it. We only spend, given that the council's budget is 360 million a year, we only spend about 200,000 on independent audit and value for money. And I think as we put more stuff out, we really need to make sure it's properly spent, and we need to actually invest a bit of money in that area to ensure we get value for every other pound that we're spending. And I've said that in audit committee as well. I think they're intending to make me chairman next year. This is the problem. If you say something and you actually say it, they give you another job.
Do we know when they're doing the Golden Road?
Doing what?
Well, this bit vouching and in the paper that was so confusing because it was on about bits going east, bits going west, and bits here and bits there, and in the end I didn't know where on earth I was with that.
Look at it.
Do we go?
Yeah, all of the stuff. One of the things that's a resource that's underused is that if you go onto Island Road's website,
You can see
it
that.
actually says exactly what they're going to do and when they're going to do it.
They actually
So,
published a whole list, didn't they, in the county press?
sorry?
They published a whole list of
Yeah,
what they're
yeah,
going
it's
to
in the press,
do
it's on the
in
website.
the
Yeah.
county press.
I mean, sometimes when they, even though it's published, it will either run behind or it will have to be changed. So, but it gives a pretty good idea. And I've asked them too, sometimes, for example, you've got a lovely surface on Broad Lane, which carries very little traffic, and you get Station Road, you start.
Yeah.
I said, well, that lots of
No,
They have to
confused
try
says
and-
no.
They've got it forward though, Station Road.
They have.
Of course, at the moment, Harrison's shut now for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Appreciate they've got to do it at some point, but they're ripping the whole road up, it appears, and they're going right down. Well, my view is they could have started that in the winter. If they're going to rip a road up, it's not necessary, is it? Rip it up.
They did, one thing I will give them
They
credit
put
for
a
is
back
that,
road in.
well, they actually, before they did anything, they called a local meeting, including residents and the local businesses, and they said, these are the options we've got.
Right,
Which one would you like us to go for?
fair enough.
And the option they went for was the one that most people had asked for.
Fair enough.
Problem, of course, is that if you've got 3/4 of people saying that's the one we want, we're still got
Still got three.
Oh, yeah. You upset someone, yeah.
Do you know why they've only done half of Wellow as well? Because they've only done one side
They
of
do it in sections, and when I've asked that one before, they say, well, we try to make sure that when we do a section, it's in an area where there's a diversion, so you can get around it. And then they do the next bit along. And I've looked at it and I thought, well, I'm not sure the diversion on that is as good as it could be. And they still have to provide access for people to get to their homes anyway. So you can't shut it off. Anything where they have done this, pieces they've done in Wellow, for example, they've done really well. They've put a very thick and flexible bed of tarmac down. And because it raised the height of the road by about 4 or 5 inches, they were then good enough to go along to all the people who wanted it and said, would you like your drive lifting a bit? Suddenly, of course, there's a massive concrete drive sprouted throughout the village. But they did say to people, do you want it if you don't? Well, they will get to the next bit. The whole rebuild programme Firstly, can I say the rebuild programme was not as good as we originally expected because the government reduced the amount of PFI money that was available. But we did get one of only 3 of those PFIs in the whole country.
Sheffield,
And dozens of councils were bidding. So we didn't get the total rebuilds that we wanted other than in specific areas. But where they have done rebuilds, like Holtner, they have done. I have to say they're a very good job. They do a very good job.
Well, Harley Shoot is better as well, isn't it?
Sorry?
Harley Shoot is better.
Yeah, everywhere they've done, it's good. And they take, originally it was going to be done over 5 years. We require them to work at night over the very busy roads, and we extended the 5 years to 7 years, and you'll notice that they shut down and they don't do any major works on arterial highways at all during the summer months because of the additional numbers of cars.
They're going to do it now.
Well, they have to, otherwise we would have gone and see. So.
No, I mean, from Port South to Cranwell.
But, I mean, yeah, they're going to do.
But that's an arterial road, and they're supposed to be, somebody said it was June.
Well, at least they're not doing it on ground.
Well, they've said that they're not normally doing.
So I don't know where else got the information from that. Anybody else?
Can I just speak a little bit about the master? Would that be okay?
Well, very briefly, because this is a question and answer.
Oh, right.
Have you
sorry.
got much to say?
No, just to say that reiterating a lot of what Stuart's been saying there, perhaps this lady might sort of say about to enforce the speed limits and get them reduced, you need data from the police, etc. That's not going to be available, as you all well know. You know, we as a group are involved in community speed watch, and we would brilliantly come out and do some speed watch and provide the data with you.